Okay, folks, if you want to learn how to make a pie chart using VBA, I'm going to go through some of those steps in which to do so. And we're going to use the flight data that Colonel Henderson covered in his pivot table setup with VBA. And if you have watched the first and second video of his series of 3, you should have everything you need up until this point, and which will allow us to build these pivot tables. So I've done something a little bit different than what he did. So instead of having the flights by unique carrier and the origin, all I have here instead is a count of the flights by airline. Something similar that you're going to need in deliverable 2-2. So in the code where his procedure was flights by origin, I have this flights by carrier. That's the name of this procedure. So instead of adding a column field to this pivot table, I'm adding pivot fields, but the orientation will be XL data field instead of XL column field. And the function will be XL count, and it'll be in the first position. So that's what creates this pivot table right here. So the next thing I want to do is I want to create a pie chart. So if I were to do that manually using the pivot table, I would go to select the Analyze tab up here in the pivot tables, click Pivot Chart, select Pie. Now, I can also do this in VBA. And one of the ways that I think is the easiest way to do it, one of the few times I will admit this, is to do a record macros instead of trying to find a good resource that tells you exactly what pie chart to use, exactly what code to use for pie chart. So the way you do that is come up here to Developer, select Record Macros. Let's just name this macro pie chart, and we'll store that macro in this workbook. Alright, so now we are recording macros. I'm only going to do one thing. I'm just going to create that same pie chart I did just a minute ago. So go to Analyze, Pivot, Pivot Chart, and select Pie, hit OK. That's it. Now go back to Developer and stop recording. Alright, so let's jump into VBA. And so I created the code in Module 2 here. So let's go there and see what we have. Alright, we have 2 lines of code. That's all we need in order to create this pie chart. So let's go ahead and copy and paste it into our module where everything else is built, and let's apply everything that in these 2 lines of code to all the variables that we've used so far. All right, so here we have ActiveSheet.Shapes.AddChart2 in parentheses 251, XLPie.Select. So what that is, it's selecting the pie chart and then putting it into the pivot sheet. In the second line of code, active chart set source data. The source is the range of pivot from A1 to B16, and that's all it needs to do. All right. So in deliverable 2.2, instead of having this pie chart being set in the pivot table sheet, we want to put it in a dashboard. So if you look up above, I have this line of code right here where I'm setting dash equal to worksheets dashboard, which is my dashboard worksheet down here. Now before I do anything, I have to select that worksheet. So we're doing the same thing up here where it's pt output.select, where we're selecting the pivot table worksheet. We're going to go ahead and type in dash.select. So when we run that code, it'll jump into the dash worksheet. So now dash is the active worksheet. So everywhere where it says active sheet, we're going to type in dash. So dash.shapes.addchart2.select. All right, and then last but not least, we have our active chart, set source data. It's going to be the range of the pivot sheet. So instead of typing in this way, we're going to go ahead and type in pt output dot range, because that's the name of the sheet that we've called it. So right here, pt output equals worksheets pivot, and the range we're just going to write it a little differently. Something you may be familiar with. All right, pt output, let's put t in there, dot range A1 to B16. So that's basically writing, including the data table, pivot table from A1 down to B16. All right, so let's go and run this. And first, I'm just going to go and delete that chart, and Let's run it. Okay, didn't quite do what we want to do, so let's just go ahead and run it line by line. So in the code, type in F8. Keep hitting F8. We'll go line by line, creating the pivot table. All right. So pivot table's there. Dash.select. I'll move this out of the way. So we're now on our dashboard. Execute the dash.shapesaddChart line of code, activeChart.sourceData, and there it is. So that's how you create a pie chart using VBA.